The final type of operators we're going to look at are logical and comparison operators. And these operators are going to be especially important in the next lesson when we talk about control flow. So I would encourage you to come back to this section as a resource when we get to that point. But for the time being, I'm going to dive right into what logical and comparison operators are. And we're going to begin by creating two variables. The first we're going to name A, and we're going to assign it a value of 1. And the second we're going to name B, and we'll assign it a value of true. And we'll go ahead and log these variables to our console so that we bear them in mind as we go through and log a bunch more things to the console as well. Now, the first type of comparison operator that we're going to look at is the equals operator. And in this case, it's kind of the simple of the two equal operators. It only evaluates whether the two values are the same. So in this case, we're evaluating if the value of A is equal to the value of B. We'll want to take note that in evaluation and comparison, JavaScript actually considers true to be 1 and false to be 0. So in this case, we're evaluating if the number 1 is essentially equal to the Boolean value 1. And it turns out that it is, but they are not the same data type. And for that, we want to use the equals operator. This operator evaluates whether two variables are the same value and the same data type. So we want to be very conscientious of, do we care about type strictness when making this equality evaluation? Just as we can evaluate for equality, we can also evaluate for inequality. We do this by removing one of the equal signs and replacing it with an exclamation point. And this indicates not. And so in the case that we want to evaluate whether two variables or two values are not equal in terms of their value only, we do a not and then one equals sign. In the case that we want to evaluate whether they're not equal either in terms of their value or in terms of their data type, then we would do two equals signs. Moving forward, we can evaluate if a value is less than another value, less than or equal to another value, greater than another value, or greater than or equal to another value. And here we see that these operations are fairly straightforward and correspond to their mathematical operations. So in this case, the less than operator is simply this left angle bracket. The less than or equal to operator is the left angle bracket followed by the equals sign. And conversely, the greater than operator is the right angle bracket, and the greater than or equal to operator is the right angle bracket followed by the equals sign. So the first one should evaluate to false because 1 is not less than true. The second one should evaluate to true because 1 is less than or equal to true, remembering that true essentially evaluates to 1 in JavaScript. And similarly then, in this greater than situation, this should evaluate to false, and this should evaluate to true. And there we have most all of the comparison operators. So now we'll move on to the logical operators. And the first logical operator we'll look at is the logical AND operator. And what this evaluates is if two expressions are both true. This will evaluate to true if and only if the first expression, this A is greater than B, and the second expression, this B is greater than 0, are both true. In this case, only one of the statements, only one of the expressions on either side of the AND operator is true, so this entire expression will evaluate to false. Conversely, the OR logical operator assesses where either the expression on its left or the expression on its right is true. So this operator will evaluate to true because while A is not greater than B, B is greater than 0. And finally, we have the NOT operator, the logical NOT operator. And this we essentially already saw in our early example with the not equal to, but we can use it independently of equality and comparisons and actually make it part of a logical expression. And so in this case, we evaluate if A is greater than or equal to B, which it is, but then we say B must also not be greater than 0, which it is not. It is greater than 0. And because we use this AND operator, this whole expression evaluates to false. Let's go to the browser to see how each of these logs in the console. We see that A and B have the same value, but not the same data type. They are not equal. A is not less than B, but it is less than or equal to B. A is not greater than B, but it is greater than or equal to B. Even though b is greater than 0, it doesn't matter because a is not greater than b, and since we're using the AND operator, it evaluates to false. Conversely though, because b is greater than 0, it doesn't matter when we use the OR operator that a is not greater than b. And finally, even though a is greater than or equal to b, it doesn't matter because in our second half of the expression, or in our second expression of this operator, we evaluate whether or not b is greater than 0, which it is, and that's negated by this NOT operator. Hopefully you were able to follow along with these examples okay. Granted, there was a lot to take in here in terms of all the operators and the expressions and things, but hopefully at a conceptual level it made sense. And like I said, there will be plenty of time to practice all these things in the next lesson on control flow in JavaScript. But for now, we're going to conclude our discussion of primitive data types in JavaScript and move on to composite data types in JavaScript. So if you feel fairly comfortable with this material, let's keep going.